couple of months ago, I climbed my first 8A after having only climbed 2 7As. Even to this day, I have not climbed any more 7As, and I've not climbed anything in between 7A and 8A. So I thought it might be interesting to make a video explaining everything I've learned from that. So in this video, I'm going to attempt to break down the sort of mindset that I needed to adopt to be able to do it, and also talk about what I learned, little things I picked up from the process. Because the background of me is I'm generally a traditional climber, trad climber and mountaineer rather than a performance climber. I've never really focused on training or trying to push hard in climbing in regards to the physical aspect. So this was a big challenge. So who is this video for? Could be useful or interesting to people who think that certain grades higher than what they're climbing at are just beyond them, or think that they couldn't do that. That's like an otherness to higher grades, I suppose. So I guess this whole me making a video is attempting to break that down a little. Yeah, of course there's a physical limit to what you can climb, but I think that shouldn't stop you trying things, I suppose. And also just for anyone that's interested in how, why on earth I decided to try and climb an 8A and how the hell I did that. With the fact that just the other weekend I was still dogging my way up a 6C. Before I get into the whole like mindset stuff and things I learned, I'll just say that there were a few things that helped being able to do this. First is that I had the time to be able to project something, and I was in the vicinity, in the climbing area. I was living there, so I could go and project before, after work and on the weekends. That was helpful, and I guess if you have time to train as well, that's helpful for this sort of specific situation. Also someone to belay you. I know you can top rope solo, but eventually you'll need someone to belay you. And then also it helps if that person is also projecting, so you can share psych and beta. That was incredibly helpful to me, to be climbing with strong climbers who were also psyched on the climb. First things first, mindset. So the mindset I'm going to outline is not the mindset I went into climbing it, but the mindset that I needed to adopt to be able to climb it. I went into climbing it as a bit of a joke, basically because my friend wanted to climb 8A and he mentioned there was an 8A slab and I love slabs, so I was like, yeah, I mean, at least I can top rope that. And then as I started top roping it, felt sort of approachable, surprisingly, and I thought it would be hilarious if I could actually do it, so I thought I'm going to try and do it. But I had to drop that mindset to be able to actually send it, which I'll go into in a bit more detail in a little bit. But the first mindset that you need, I think, is to just be very psyched on the climb and not just want the grade. So this whole video will be about pushing yourself rather than getting a specific grade. It's more about you picking a challenge that is hard for you, regardless of what that is numbered or whatever. It's more about, like, you see a climb and you're like, wow, I would love to be able to climb that. That climb looks so fun. Which brings me into my second point, which is not worrying about whether you do or do not send it. And this is often referred to, I think, as like outcome-based thinking. So when you're trying it and when you're going for send attempts, instead of thinking, I'm going for a send attempt, you're thinking, what can I learn from this climb? Am I enjoying this climb? Because every time I went into it like, okay, this is the time, I'm going to psych myself up, I want to send it, I want to complete it, I would just fall off because I'd have adrenaline going all through me and I wouldn't be able to keep my cool and I would just fall off. So I needed to just release any notion that I would send it. I need to be like, realistically, I probably won't. Like, I've climbed 2 7As. For me to climb an 8A, it's unrealistic. And just release any notion that that was going to happen. And instead think, what am I learning from this climb? Am I enjoying this climb? And if the answer is no, probably don't even bother. But if the answer is yes, I really love this climb, which for me it was, I completely loved the climb. and then just think about being present on it, think about each move, feeling each move. And yeah, that was the sort of mindset. If I walked away having not sent it, I would have been pretty happy that I'd managed to push myself to such an extent I was close to sending it, or that I'd learned more about my weaknesses and what I need to work on to be a climber that could climb that climb that I really loved. So yeah, the mindset was more about learning and enjoying the climb rather than wanting desperately to tick an 8A, which I sort of started off with. Like, I just thought it'd be really funny if I could climb 8A, but every time I thought that, I would fall off, and I had to completely kill that whole narrative to be able to actually keep cool on the wall and climb it. So that brings me to my third point, to be fair, in the mindset, which is about releasing control. And I feel like this can be applied to anything where you're trying really hard in life and you're doing something where there's not a clear path ahead of you, like you haven't seen other people like you do something in this way that you're doing it. Because I think, well, everyone wants to have control over things. I think feel in control in their life. But if you're trying something that's right at your limit, you have no idea whether you'll be able to do that or not. There's just literally no way of knowing because you haven't tried it. Something completely foreign to you. In the unknown, there is a lack of control, and releasing that control is necessary to be able to even bother doing it. I think you need to drop any notion that you know how it's going to go and just literally ride with the process and trust the process, which is significantly easier if you enjoy the process. If you actually like the climb and you like challenging yourself and you like the surprising yourself by getting further each time, or and you're okay with that being all it will be, and it might not be anything more than that, it's a lot easier to release control and trust the process. And I don't think this is applicable when you're like steadily going up the grades, because in that situation you don't need to release so much control. You think, okay, I've done 3 7Cs now, 2 7C pluses, maybe I can try an 8A because I'm incrementing my way up. It's a natural progression, it's a line, it makes sense, it feels predictive. Or maybe you've seen other people do like you doing it in that way and you think, yeah, that's a model for success I can follow. So this is only really applicable, this like having to release any notion of control and ride with the process when you're just jumping leaps and bounds, when you're trying something really, like something you really believe, like, oh, that's not for people like me, sort of thing. Or no, I'm not capable of that, that's ridiculous. Okay, now I'm just gonna mention some like little tidbits that I learned coming from a trad background that was really useful for sport climbing. First one, weight does make a difference when you're climbing at your limit. So this is like excess weight that you have on your harness. So ditch all the random ATCs or press or slings that you just have on your harness, because when you're, crimping your life out, it's actually going to have an impact and your performance can be boosted by getting rid of them. Probably obvious. However, body weight doesn't really have a huge impact. I know this is like talked about quite a lot lately, and I used to think, I think when I started getting good at climbing, I was also losing a lot of weight just because I was exercising more, I think. And I sort of thought it was correlated to, obviously, like, it's going to be easier to do a pull-up if I'm 5 kilograms lighter. However, with this process, I was probably the heaviest I've been. I'd been for like a good year, probably, at least. I mean, I didn't weigh myself, so I can't know for sure, but I just felt sort of fuller figured because I'd spent the winter season just prior to doing this sport climbing trip, winter climbing, and just eating a lot of chocolate and like calorie loading when I wasn't winter climbing. So my legs got a lot heavier and stronger, and I just generally felt not like in climbing physique, I guess, in a typical way people think you should be as lean as possible apart from your arms. when actually in this climb specifically, especially because it was a slab, the rest before the crux required really strong calf muscles to be able to basically stand there for as long as possible until your calves are burning so much you have to not stand there anymore on tiny little ledges. And that was a crucial part of the climb, so you needed strong legs for that. Yeah, what I learned was, if you're trying something really hard, rather than being light or worried about that, it's much more important that your energy levels are high and you feel nourished. Especially if you're projecting and you're going, or training and you're going back and you're having to keep consistently working at something, you will lose energy fast if you're not fueling yourself properly, and that is way more important than being light. I think when I've been lighter in the past, I've had lower energy because I haven't been eating enough. And also just the fact that so many different muscles are needed for climbing, for all the different types and disciplines of climbing. There's all sorts of weird funky beaters that you're all of a sudden like, oh, I need this side core muscle to be more activated than it is, or whatever. So generally just keeping your whole body healthy, nourished and strong, and like excess weight is fine. Like, you don't need to be lean at all. It's more about having enough calories and fuel to sustain you over long periods of time, to be able to be consistent at it, because otherwise you'll burn out really quick. You might be lighter and have better performance in the short term, but to be consistently progressing over long periods, you need to be just eating a lot, basically. Leading on from that, something I learned from the sport climbers was that hydrating and eating well the day before really affect your performance the next day. If you're dehydrated one day, the next day you will perform quite a bit worse. So yeah, kind of is along the same vein. Eat well and drink well. And then another really obvious one but really thwarted me was, do not put sun cream on your hands before you climb, because you will slide off the holds. So I learnt that the hard way. And then the last one to sort of wrap the video up is that, yeah, flow state is a real thing. And sort of by having the mindset that I had that I've outlined previously, and selecting the challenge level that is just right, that is pushing you enough but you are also capable of doing it, and it's like right on your limit, yeah, you can enter this flow state. And I think I entered it on the send attempt, and it's really quite amazing. It feels both calming yet also sort of euphoric, and you just feel completely present and immersed. And it's almost like I didn't want the climb to be over when I topped out, which was crazy because I'd wanted to complete this climb for so long, and yet when I finished it I wanted to just keep climbing it on repeat. But then obviously as soon as I'd come down, and then I was going to have performance anxiety to ever try it again. So I would like to try it again, but I think now yeah, I would have to do a lot of work on my mindset to not have intense performance anxiety at the thought of trying that climb again. But overall, flow state is pretty cool and a pretty cool thing to enter. So yeah, this video is not about training tips. I don't know how to train. It's something I'm trying to learn myself. I will try and learn how you train, because climbing hard things is really fun. Like climbing anything that pushes you is really fun. So yeah, hopefully I can continue to do that. But yeah, it was just about not being afraid to take on something that seems just incredibly unlikely, and then how you can face doing that thing that seems really unlikely, I suppose. And I certainly learned a whole lot from that process, and it was very interesting for me, so I thought I would just talk about it a little bit.